One rumor has followed Jacqueline Bisset about for more than 50 years. It began with Steve McQueen on the set of Bullitt in 1968. Fans believed they were secretly in love because of their amazing chemistry. Bisset, however, has finally had enough at age 81. She is speaking out about what actually transpired between them. People weren't prepared for the truth she's exposing. And Steve McQueen isn't the only one. It's about a woman's career being ruined by a single falsehood. She's sharing her perspective after decades of frustration. A baby girl was delivered to the sound of distant bombs on a September morning in 1944 at one of the darkest periods in England's history. Her mother, Arlette, gave birth to Winifred Jacqueline Fraser Fizz without the presence of her spouse. He was in Iceland, far away. While the jets continued to thunder overhead, I was working as a doctor. Jacqueline was born in Weybridge, which had been regarded as a safe town. However, in July 2 months prior, nearby V-1 flying bombs had dropped. She was born in a world full with smoke and sirens, yet it was supposed to be quiet. Arlette has evaded death once before. She rode a bicycle out of Paris in 1940 when the Germans invaded France. By traveling along routes ravaged by conflict until she was able to board a British troop ship. She was a proud and bright lawyer. However, she was a refugee with trauma that had never fully left her by the time she got to England. Though it wasn't about style or culture, she brought up Jacqueline to speak French. It was a matter of survival. During family arguments, little Jacqueline had to step in and translate when Arlette became upset, since she would sometimes shout and other times cry in French. She was already the mediator at the age of 7. Then came the turning point in the story. Jacqueline's mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis around 1951 when she was just 7 years old. It devastated the entire family, not just Arlette. The man who was meant to be her caregiver, her father, left. He just walked away. No money, no support, no farewell. And he didn't really help them for the next 17 years. While attempting to prevent their lives from falling apart entirely, Jacqueline witnessed her mother gradually deteriorate both physically and emotionally, while Arlette was left to suffer. They were poor. Jacqueline was just 8 years old when her ballet lessons had to be exchanged for employment. The $2 monthly charge was just too much for them to pay. In order to dance, she cleaned the studio's floors and mirrors. She began modeling at the age of 14 in order to support herself. It was desperation rather than glamour. In certain weeks, her earnings exceeded her mother's disability benefit by 10 Donhalsers or 15 Hallers. She pushed her mother in a wheelchair, shopping bags in hand, with a calm strength that most adults didn't even possess, as people in the area recalled. The worst started when she turned 15. As her mother's health deteriorated, Jacqueline took over the role of caregiver. She assisted her mother with eating, washing, dressing, and even staying upright every day. The majority of Jacqueline's income was going directly toward her medical expenses by the time she started performing in movies. By the late 1990s, almost $200,000 had been spent. She responded that she already had a child when reporters questioned why she had never had any. An enormous one. Mom, long shoots required her to hire private nurses in order to travel. This went on for 40 years until 1999, when Arlette passed away. Jacqueline was 55 years old. Jacqueline persisted in spite of everything. To make ends meet, she worked as a model and went to the Lycée Française des Landes. She returned to a French school at the age of 17 in order to work on her accent. In 1965, she made her cinematic debut in The Knack and How to Get It. She had no lines and was just paid $50. However, her on-screen persona caught my attention. She was soon cast in The Cul-de-sac, directed by Roman Polanski. 1966, she was put to the test even then, though. She was supposed to do a nude scene for Polanski. She declined. He reprimanded her with retakes after threatening to fire her. She didn't bend yet. She co-starred with Peter Sellers and Ursula Andress in Casino Royale in 1967. The budget was $12 million, but Jacqueline only received $15,000. The seller received $1 million. She was surrounded in changing rooms, bullied, and treated more like an object than a professional while filming. She refused to give in, but there was a cost. Because she was stereotyped as the attractive European woman, it was more difficult for her to land significant parts. She encountered a situation that almost put an end to her career. That same year, she was presented with $100,000 roles apiece during a meeting with a major producer, only if she consented to have sex with him. She declined. She was placed on his blacklist. She lost 2 movie parts, including one with Paul Newman. There was no work for 8 months. Behind the scenes, Audrey Hepburn discreetly assisted her by introducing her to female-friendly filmmaking. Although Jacqueline never gave the man's name, sources surmise that he was a Fox executive who had been fired for the same conduct in the 1980s. Something that would alter everything happened to Jacqueline Bisset when she was 24 years old. She co-starred with Steve McQueen in Bullitt. When the film was released on October 17, 1968, it did not do well. With $42.03 million, it placed in the top 5 highest-grossing movies of that year. However, it was more than simply the cash or the well-known 10-minute, 53-second automobile pursuit that left an impression. It was the way Bisset resisted being surrounded by a famous figure from Hollywood like McQueen. While McQueen raced around the streets in a Mustang GT 390, she was behind the wheel of a Porsche 356C. She later chuckled when he told her, "You are a very good driver for a girl." She was anxious, though. Who wouldn't be? But she succeeded. Bullitt was also included in the U.S. National Film Registry in 2007. Her legacy in cinema was set in stone. However, Bullitt was not the only significant event in 1968. For Bisset, that year was a huge success. She wasn't even intended to be alongside Frank Sinatra in The Detective. Despite being prepared, Mia Farrow left due to disagreements with Rosemary's Infant. Bisset took over. For its period, the film was audacious. It addressed subjects that mainstream movies shied away from, such as LGBT life, and not in a positive light. Nevertheless, it generated conversation. She co-starred with Michael Sarrazin in The Sweet Ride. She was nominated for a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer because of the role. Thus, she had 3 big movies in a single year: Bullitt, The Detective, and The Sweet Ride. She moved from being a 20th Century Fox contract player to becoming a household name in this way. She was more than just pretty. On screen, she was strong, but there were pitfalls to fame. She worked on the movie the first time in 1969. It was supposed to be a comedy about coming of age. 3 adolescent lads attempt to become virgins after mistaking her for a prostitute. It was meant to be humorous, but it made no difference. The sexual scenes were the focus of attention. Some critics praised it as the best sex movie, while others criticized it for being overly emotional. Bisset demonstrated her ability to change her appearance by donning a blonde wig. However, everyone only discussed how hot she was. The moniker of sex symbol stuck to her at that point. She detested it as well. She aspired to be recognized for her acting skills as much as her appearance. However, the moniker followed her like an unshakable shadow into the 1970s. The attention caused discomfort even as she was making history. She claimed that McQueen was amiable and supportive during the Bullitt filming. However, she never had a chance to get to know him. He was too busy hurrying about discussing automobiles. She had to say things that were surprising at the time on The Detective. Words like penis and semen, which were simply not used in 1968 motion pictures, were used in crime scene conversation. However, she maintained her professionalism. It wasn't easy working with Sinatra either. She needed to match his legendary energy. However, she did. She repeatedly demonstrated her ability to compete with the top celebrities in Hollywood. Then, in 1977, came The Deep. It was more than just acting this time. It was a matter of survival. 153 days were spent on the shoot. 8,195 dives were made. The amount of compressed air used exceeded 1 million cubic feet. For the position, Bisset had to learn how to scuba dive. In one scenario, a diver tugged a stick too forcefully, causing her stunt counterpart to dislocate her shoulder. Bisset herself nearly drowned during their one take. However, the initial scene was what everybody recalled. Underwater, she's wearing a white t-shirt. The see-through shirt garnered media attention. According to producer Peter Guber, that t-shirt made me a rich man. Bisset, however, garnered more than just notice. She was nominated for another Golden Globe. She starred in Francois Truffaut's Day for Night in 1973. It took home 3 BAFTA and the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. Bisset portrayed a recovering actress who had experienced a breakdown. Although it was honest and unvarnished, one scene featured her in her undies. She expected her mother to be proud, but she was appalled. Their relationship suffered as a result of the embarrassment. Nevertheless, Bisset had no regrets about the part. She had faith in the movie. She accepted its views on emotional sincerity and filmmaking. To make the movie feel even more intimate, Truffaut even portrayed the director. Murder on the Orient Express followed in 1974. Stars like Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, and Sean Connery were all present. Countess Andreni was portrayed by Bisset. She invented a line during a pivotal scene. Sidney Lumet, the director, detested that. Given that it was Agatha Christie, he insisted that actors adhere to the script precisely. They got into such a heated argument that Bisset nearly left the set. Ultimately, they managed to reach a compromise. She generally followed the script, but she did retain some of her own touches. In a cast of luminaries, her performance was particularly noteworthy. Christie herself stated that she was completely satisfied with this adaptation. She portrayed Liz Cassidy, a less subdued Jackie Kennedy, in the 1978 film The Greek Tycoon. Onassis was portrayed by Anthony Quinn. Before Bisset met the real Jackie, all was well. One of the most embarrassing experiences of her life was the meeting. After glancing over the proposal, Jackie declared it to be unappealing. She moved away after telling Bisset that directly. No greetings, no handshake. Merely icy disapproval. Later, Bisset described it as both thrilling and terrifying. The film featured intimate sequences aboard a yacht, sensitive interactions, and disagreements over food. Bisset couldn't forget that moment, but it's understandable why Jackie detested it. After she and Charles Bronson filmed St. Ives in 1976, the rumors started to circulate. They appeared to be having romantic dinners when they were photographed. Despite being married to Jill Ireland, he continued to make headlines. They were seen holding hands. Long visits in Bisset's trailer were discussed in whispers by crew members. They were always together, according to the hotel workers. She acknowledged something more profound but denied the affair. In the midst of my loneliness, she told a reporter, the attention flattered me. More than any confirmation could, that is. There was genuine chemistry between their characters in the movie. The lines were blurred in intimate scenes. Many questioned whether what they were seeing on film was merely acting. For years, they were both plagued by rumors. Jacqueline Bisset made her television debut one calm evening in 1984 in a part quite unlike anything she had ever played. During Europe's darkest period, she portrayed a German countess who fell in love with a Jewish writer. Second World War. Nina von Halder, her character, was experiencing more than just romantic passion. By joining the resistance to aid Jews and escaping the Nazis, she was putting everything on the line. The Last Jews in Berlin by Leonard Gross contains true anecdotes that served as the basis for the film. Bisset researched the Holocaust extensively in order to get ready. It was emotionally taxing. Furthermore, her performance had the kind of weight that only comes from genuine understanding, even though it is unknown if she ever visited Auschwitz. Her honesty and rawness on screen were praised, and the film featured real documentary footage of Berlin during the war. It altered the public's perception of her as an actor in the 1980s. Beginning on August 8, 1983, she began filming under the volcano in Mexico that same year. The chaos, the heat, and the humidity were all harsh. The film, which was directed by John Huston and took place on the Day of the Dead, required her to give her all. Because Albert Finney, who was portraying a British consul who was in decline, remained in character throughout. The tension was heightened. They were surrounded by locals, and legends like Katie Jurado and Emilio Fernandez were emotionally spent and were perspiring. On set, there were rumors of scorpions, but whether they were true or not, the pressure was palpable. Bisset's portrayal of Yvonne Furman garnered her a Golden Globe nomination. It deserved it. Then, in 1989, something quite different appeared. Bisset portrayed wealthy widow Claire Lipkin in scenes from the Beverly Hills class battle, who was enmeshed in ridiculous and provocative antics. The film was audacious, sarcastic, and unrestrained in its comments and nudity. However, people were shaken by what transpired next. Co-star Rebecca Schaeffer was killed by a stalker 1 month after the movie's premiere. In the movie, the murderer had spotted her. It garnered attention and made people think critically about what movies depict and how far is too far. Bisset's fearlessness in that part was noted by critics. Her reputation didn't matter to her. She had something more important to say. She joined the Sleepy Time Gal, a tiny independent initiative, in 2001. It was a subdued movie that was full of family strife and emotion. She was joined by Amy Madigan, Martha Plimpton, and Nick Stahl. However, the film kept experiencing delays, budget constraints, and schedule issues. It was difficult to make independent films in those days, and it had a negative impact. Bisset persisted nevertheless. She provided the pain and tenderness needed for her job. Her performance stuck with many who viewed the film, even if it didn't do well in theaters. She allegedly had the opportunity to be in Basic Instinct at one point in the late 1980s. Rumor has it that Sharon Stone received a $1 million offer for the role that ultimately made her famous. Bisset, however, declined. It was too different from her typical routine. The controversy, the violence, and the sex, her journey wasn't that. Stone became a legend after the film made over $350 million. Bisset, however, didn't appear to regret it. Character depth had always been more important to her than money. You could tell everything about her from that choice. The drama in her personal life was equally intense. She was with Alexander Godunov from 1981 to 1988. He was the Russian ballet star who left his wife behind in 1979 to defect from the Soviet Union. There was energy when they first met in 1981 at a party in New York. After 6 months, they fell in love. Godunov, however, drank excessively. Bisset's beloved boyfriend gradually vanished. She described his 1988 departure for another woman as a betrayal that devastated her. He was discovered dead from liver illness in 1995 at the age of 45. For a man she had already been in a lengthy relationship, this time with Michael Sarrazin, back in the 1970s. They lived together in a Malibu beach house for 7 years after meeting while filming The Sweet Ride in 1968. They were adored by fans, but fame interfered. This rose to fame in 1970 following her breakthrough performance in Airport. Sarrazin was unable to cope. She acknowledged choosing her job over love in 1981. His character abandoned the beach life when they worked on their last film together. Imitating sadness felt like art. Then there were the Frank Sinatra rumors. She co-starred with him in The Detective in 1968. Sinatra was upset with Mia Farrow after she backed out, and it has been alleged that he instructed his to chop her hair in retaliation against his ex-wife. Perhaps in an attempt to fix what was already damaged, he wanted her to look like Mia. Biss rejected the affair years later in 2020, claiming that Sinatra was already married and that she had no interest in having an affair. According to some, Sinatra had liaisons with co-star Lee Remick and Bisset while filming. He was going through a highly public divorce at the time. It was difficult to distinguish between personal and professional life. Victor Dree, a Moroccan businessman, was Bisset's partner from 1973 until 1980, and he completely changed her life. In 1974, they met while flying. He left his Parisian fashion company, began flipping properties after relocating to Beverly Hills. She joined him as a business and romantic partner. But all was lost by his gambling. She was crushed by his debts. In order to settle his debt, she had to sell her jewelry. It was a nightmare for finances. Nevertheless, he recovered and became a billionaire nightclub tycoon years later. Entering the Nightclub Hall of Fame and launching Excess in Las Vegas, Jacqueline Bisset took the Golden Globe stage on January 12, 2014 to accept her prize for Dancing on the Edge's Best Supporting Actress. The night was totally taken over by what transpired next. For what seemed like forever, she stood silent. The audience was undecided about whether to wait or clap once again. Then she finally said something. However, she spewed out a strange medley of profanity, lengthy pauses, and sporadic advice in place of the customary thank you speech. On live TV, she said, "Go to hell and don't come back to anyone who has made me upset, just like my mother used to say." It was too late as the censors sprang into action. Memes went viral in a matter of minutes. Some believed she was intoxicated, others only gaped in shock. Later, she claimed to be overwhelmed. She was hungry after 47 years since her first nomination. She actually claimed not to have eaten dinner. However, there was no satisfactory explanation for why, in front of millions of people, she began discussing forgiveness or looking for co-star Chiwetel Ejiofor in the throng. One of the decade's most memorable award show speeches was that 2-minute segment. Her viral success wasn't the first or last time. She has been the subject of one persistent rumor for more than 50 years. She co-starred in Bullitt with Steve McQueen in 1968. There was an electrifying chemistry between them. The paparazzi flooded in. They professed to be secretly in love. Bisset had had enough by 2020 when she was 76 years old. She was so tired that she said, "We never slept together." However, the tales continued. The rumors were further stoked by the scenes they shared while driving through San Francisco in a yellow convertible Soarer. She has described it as frustrating and draining. It feels like a slap whenever it comes up in an interview. Fans and biographers, however, are unable to ignore it, regardless of how often she rejects it. Some careers have lasted longer than that one rumor. She starred in the 2018 political thriller Backstabbing for Beginners, which was filmed in Morocco with Ben Kingsley and Theo James. Even though she was 74, that set was anything but elegant or calm. This set clashed with Danish filmmaker Per Fly over a romantic sequence that she didn't approve of. She declined, calling it gratuitous. Manufacturing stopped. During the confrontational scenes, Ben Kingsley's acting was so powerful that his compared him to an eagle flailing his wings. The stress behind the screen was far worse than the anxiety on screen. Off camera, it felt more like a battleground of egos, although she played a French NGO activist in post-war Iraq. Then 2021 arrived. At the age of 77, she played Madame Brunel, the frightful ballet director, in Birds of Paradise. Doubles would have been helpful. She insisted on doing the majority of the scenes herself, but no one would have blamed her. She strained a muscle so severely during rehearsals that the entire shoot was halted for a week. Massive budget overruns resulted from that one injury. COVID had already caused a 5-month delay in the film's release. With only a week remaining, it was now collapsing. Even her co-stars were in pain. The bodies of Diana Silvers and Christine Frozeth were pushed to the limit. The day before a crucial sequence was filmed, Silvers broke a rib. Before returning to Budapest, she also had a strange accident in which she lost a portion of her third toe. Bisset continued to dance despite the chaos. Finally, in 2022, something went right. The movie Lorraine and Rose didn't go well. Although it was private and discreet, it was very successful. Palm Springs won Best Feature, Ojai won Best Script, Studio City won Best Actress, and Palm Springs won Best Narrative Picture. She was suddenly ubiquitous again at the age of 78. Additionally, she received Lifetime Achievement Awards in Sedona, Sarasota, and Santa Fe. However, there was a shadow even during this high. She was reminded of her shortcomings by the movie in which she portrayed a great actress mentoring a budding filmmaker. Despite her desire to direct, she never succeeded. She claimed that the job revealed opportunities she had been ignoring for years. The applause was a little painful too, for once. When 2025 arrived, the news took a sudden turn. She told Page Six that 80, she had little sympathy for the Navdi Too movement. She advised women to use the F word or learn the word no. She asserted that because she never allowed herself to be vulnerable, she was never harassed. She even pointed the finger at women's subtext and attire. That wasn't what Hollywood was prepared for. The reaction was immediate. She was defended by some as being brutally honest. Despite being dubbed out of touch by others, she didn't back down. She never does. Her resentment of Hollywood's marketing of her began long before that. She starred in The D in 1977, and although the wet t-shirt poster became famous, she detested it. She attempted to prevent its publication. She put her life in danger while filming, almost drowning. "That t-shirt made me a rich man," said producer Peter Guber. One of the biggest failures in Hollywood in Sean earned her $1.65 million in 1981. She still lists The Deep as one of her worst letdowns, though. Not because it failed, but rather because it made her become someone she didn't want to be. She claimed that it was extremely risky in 2022, and that it was not a good idea to describe it as a damp t-shirt. Francois Truffaut's 1973 film day for Night was her favorite. She continues to discuss that one. Most people overlook another aspect of her existence. She became Angelina Jolie's godmother in 1975. When asked, she admitted that she didn't really know Marceline Bertrand, Jolie's mother. They were buddies for more than 30 years. Bisset presented Jolie with the Desert Palm Achievement Award while he was on stage at the Palm Springs Festival on January 3, 2025. She called her a wonderful mother. They've experienced highs and lows. Jolie removed Bisset from her movies, including Mr. and Mrs. Smith. However, she never abandoned her. Bisset and Jolie remained close even after their divorce from Brad Pitt. Despite everything, she is proud of her daughter. Jacqueline Bisset is 81 years old and still hasn't given up. As of 2025, plastic surgery has never been done on her. She claims that although she was advised in her 40s that there would be no parts in her 70s, she decided that she would still be okay at that age. She was also correct. She claims to look authentic. She advises young ladies to flaunt their legs and enjoy their youth. Knowing who you are and not chasing after what fades, in her opinion, is the key to aging with dignity. One thing is certain, regardless of your opinion of her. Over 60 years into her career in Hollywood, Jacqueline Bisset remains steadfast in her resolve to be herself.